Greetings, YouTube. Apologies for the hood, but Mandarin has decided to join us and use my head as a pillow. So I'm going to link to an article today that deals with a new strategy being used by neighborhoods to move sex offenders out of their area. And that strategy is micro parks. Parks so small that they may only hold a single piece of playground equipment. But by placing that park in the neighborhood, it then becomes a zone where sex offenders cannot live. There's a certain number of things that have to be understood here. Not all sex offenders are pedophiles. Some sex offenders are, of course, adult offenders who preyed upon adult people. Some were statutory rape situations. An 18-year-old that slept with a 17-year-old in a state where 18 is the age of consent, even though it was consensual. Some are people that exposed themselves. You stood in your window and showed yourself to the whole world repeatedly, you would become a sex offender, even though you never touched anyone and never posed a threat to the community. But if one of these micro parks pops up in the neighborhood, suddenly the sex offenders are driven out. Now, the reasoning behind this makes a lot of sense if you live in that neighborhood. By putting in a micro park, if someone is doing a search to find a home there, for example, when I bought this house, I could have, if I had chosen, done a search to see how many sex offenders there are in the area. I did not do that. I'm a 48-year-old male, my wife's an adult, and neither of us is concerned if there are any sex offenders in the area. But we could have. But if there had been a micro park here, that micro park would have meant that this would become a sex offender-free zone, which means my search results would have come up with nothing, making the neighborhood more attractive and the property values maintained, if not driven up. So the reasoning behind this is simple. It also gives parents the illusion, or I should probably say delusion, that their children are safe. There is no safe, folks. There is safer, more safe, or less safe, but there is no safe. Particularly if you take into account that 90% of sexual abuse survivors, that are children, knew their abuser. So driving strangers into the street isn't going to make your child any safer. Now, and also, let's think about this fact. Say there's an apartment building with sex offenders in it. They're all there because that's where the parole officers have put them, and they're under controlled observation. Some of them are under there so much observation and control that they can't do things like look at pornography, have drugs, or alcohol. They are observed. Now, one of these micro parks pops up. Suddenly, these people are driven into the street. Where did they go? There's a case in Miami where these sex offenders, with nowhere else to go, began to congregate under a bridge and on a neighborhood sidewalk because there was nowhere for them to go. And of course, the police broke these camps up. Where did those sex offenders go? Nobody knows. So what kind of observation is that? What kind of chance is there for a reoffending if no one can track these people? Now, this ignores the fact that America has a very twisted idea about sex offenders. We arrest them, we charge them, we try them, we often find them guilty, we send them to prison, and when they get out, we decide, you're going to be ostracized forever. Even though we don't ostracize murderers this way. You can murder someone, go to prison, serve your time, get out, and not end up on some kind of list. Yet if you're a sex offender, you will be on that list forever because people have a skewed view of risk assessment in America. They are convinced that these people are a greater risk than the unknown sex offenders out there who have never been caught or who are under the radar. So we have a very strange idea of what is safe or safer here. And like I said, there is no safe. Never has been, never will be, no matter how hard you try. So, seeing as we have a broken system that makes these individuals into pariahs forever, even though they could absolutely pose zero risk to your children, what do we do with them? Where do they go? Some will espouse keeping them in jail forever. What if they aren't guilty? What if they exposed themselves in a window? What if it was a statutory rape situation where they were consenting? Do those individuals deserve to be put in jail forever? I've heard people advocate we just kill them. And again, what if they aren't guilty? What if they are exposers? Do they deserve death? These are complex answers. They're not being answered. Rather complex questions that are not being answered by microparks and driving sex offenders into the shadows. Just to give people a delusion of safety and to make sure their property values don't go down. I work with a sex offender. Registered sex offender. I don't hang out with the guy. I don't want to talk to the guy. But he has a right to have a job. He has a right to live somewhere. And I think that we don't understand that. We are pushing them into the darkness and then being concerned that in the darkness are things we don't understand.